Uh, I'm curious. You've been in the, TV scene for a really long time. You're still in it. What's changed in the last, since you started in TV or just in LA studio in general?
Well, one of the biggest turnarounds was the when Mike Post was the one of the first to do it. Started using samples and synthesizer tracks, that were pre-programmed or programmed by himself, or actually he had a team of people that did it. And so that turned around the industry a lot, where the opportunities, the work for those musicians diminished, greatly. But there was other work for them in movies. Movie score soundtracks picked up, and most of those, well, a large majority of the movies were still using full orchestras. John Williams and Jerry Goldsmiths and these great composers. There was Hans Zimmer, still to this day is a great composer, but he was kind of known for, in the early days, he had purchased every sampling. I think they were Roland 760s, and they had sample banks of all the string sections and so forth. And he hired five, Bruce Fowler, I know, yeah, Jeff Rona, some other people, composers, and they would actually come up with these tracks. He would write the initial theme, and then they would sample, and and then some of the work got cut down for orchestras. But there's been a resurgence now; it's kind of come back. But like I've told my students, and anybody that knows me knows, okay, here he goes again. But I said, your competition isn't Juilliard or Eastman or USC. It's Macintosh. It's this computer that we're holding right now with like samples of every instrument, and in such a rush and really, originally the synthesizer was designed as a separate voice by Robert Moog, and Subotnick and all those people. They were doing it to create a new texture palette, a new kind of music. But when some people realized that they could eventually create the waveforms for instruments, then it became more of a cost-cutting measure, more of a accountant kind of bottom line figure with corporations and big movie, or the Fox TV and so forth, huge corporations, and they realized they could save a lot of money by not hiring the musicians. And it's not just happening in music, now it's robotics, everything you could think of. But that happened, and that started to turn around the music. In fact, one of the reasons that I considered this job was because I'd done a lot of Disney movies, and they were starting to take them over to Europe to get recorded with orchestras that were charging very low rates, and didn't have the union restrictions. They would record all night. They would, those kind of things. So that was, that was one of the turnarounds there. And I saw that happening. And when this job came up, and I always wanted to be, in education from the time, I started, when I was 18 years old. So this opportunity came up. I thought, well, it's a perfect opportunity to give back, and, but I try to stay connected as much as possible so our students can come down and witness some of those recordings in LA. But yeah, Nathan, there was a big turnaround. It started in the 80s. Actually, there was a musician strike when I first moved there, I think 1980 or something. And some of the composers were taking their film scores to Europe to be recorded during a musician strike. Ironically, our own trumpet teacher, Gil Kaup, was one of the people that were playing the scores over in Germany that were taken over, like Silence of the Lambs. Some of the composers took their work over there to get recorded with orchestras, So it started at least that long ago, at least in the early 80s, and it's been kind of progressing and progressing. But there's been, like I said, there's been a kind of a resurgence of live orchestras, with some of the directors that are coming up and realizing that they're not going to capture that emotional content connection with their film or their TV show, So I'm glad to see that happening. It's starting to come back. I mean, there's TV shows out too that are getting people interested in seeing again. The Voice, and we can always say, we'll be critical about it, but at least it's getting some young people excited about performing again. We need one for jazz now. We need the next thing is the next jazz, the Coltrane show, or the Albert R. or Eric Dolphy show or something. but we need to bring that back. It's just a matter of numbers. There's more people in that than there are in the instrumental, but we have a mission, as educators, and to make sure our students go out there and they can discern the difference. They know the difference between, sincere, authentic, wonderful music and something that's quickly fabricated and or just an imitation of something else, and that's going to happen with all the people you make when they get on that, all these musicians go out there, whether they become musicians or not, whatever they go into, they're going to appreciate it and know it and love it and hopefully only consume the best.
Excellent. Excellent. How do you take your, you said you take your LA, or you take some of your students to an LA session? Is that UNLV students?
Yes, only UNLV students. And I have an agreement. My good friend Walter Murphy, who writes the music, had said to me, he said, if you want to bring a few students in, you can. And it's a unique opportunity. I've only seen I've seen some students from USC, and I saw some students from Eastman come in with Mark Walters last season. But that's, once in a while, but Walter's given me the opportunity to bring in, 3 or 4 students for the recording sessions. And wow, it's made a big difference in a lot of their lives. I know there's a good friend of ours, Julian, Jorge Machayan, he's won award for his wind orchestra piece, for his big band arrangement of a song that the Navy Commodores played. But anyway, Jorge came to
he was just telling me, so in previous interview, we mentioned that you wrote a sonata for Joe Alessi.
Oh, yeah.
I was just talking to him last night. He said that it's going to be premiered in some new music festival in Arizona in like April.
Fantastic. And he's another one of our, grads, Julian. But so Jorge came to one of the recordings, and Rick Baptist was the lead trumpet player at the time. He's retired from that, but Rick was like the #1 trumpet player. And then Wayne Bergeron was his sub, believe it or not. And then Wayne's taken over. But I told Rick about Jorge's story and, his family, and he helped his mom with the surgery and raising the money and so forth. And he was so moved, he took Jorge to lunch along with a trombone player by the name of Andy Martin. And we went to lunch for him. And he told him, you have these musicians, but we're a team. If there's a great jazz trumpet solo on this, I can do it. But there's Chuck Finley sitting right there. I'm passing it to Chuck, Or if there's a lead trumpet part, I'm with Wayne, I'm going to give it to him. Although the only problem is he's on that mic and they're expecting it on the mic. But he's talking about the teamwork and the camaraderie as musicians, And anybody that wants to be the hero and do all that will fall flat, And Jorge was just, it made an incredible impression on him, getting to talk to, and just having come from the recording and watching it happen, where these musicians haven't seen any of that music before they walked in the room, So, and many other players have come down there and experienced that at different levels. Now, we never know what the music's going to be until we get in there. Sometimes it could be, I remember we had a student, Brian Murphy, who was a graduate student. He's in Canada now, but teaching up there. But he came to one of the recordings and with somebody else, and I opened up the yellow folder, and I look, and it's just a sea of notes, scales, and I'm thinking, oh no, this is the day when I'm going to fall apart. I had a chance to warm up. Where would I warm up? And I'm trying to entertain students. So anyway, I think I got him into the booth, and I looked at it, and it was episode about Nazi Germany, and Stewie was doing crazy things, flying planes, and we had actually. John Williams was up the road scoring another one, and they asked him if he could borrow one of the Indiana Jones chase cues. So we actually played one of those, and then Walter had written, 2-minute episodic underscore like that, and it was difficult. I mean, it was, and I'm doubling. Luckily, I'm doubling the strings most of the time, but I still can't hide. There's a button called solo. You push solo, you hear everything the piano player is doing. If you're using the pedal and it makes a whoosh sound, they can't use it. So you have to even manage the pedal in those studios. If you're a string player and you bump that music stand, you've ruined the take. And that leaks into the next, and they'll stop the take if they heard it. Not a good thing. So studio playing has a whole different set of skills. And of course, as Julian can tell you, the doubling for the woodwind players is absolutely critical. You're playing clarinet and then you're picking up the flute, you're picking up the saxophone for the big band sound on something. It's a required skill for those woodwind players and that mindset, French horn players are phenomenal. You know, Jim Thatcher's a friend of mine. He was Jerry Goldsmith's, the one that Goldsmith would go to if he had a French horn solo, like in, trying to think of the one, was it Cinema? It wasn't Paradiso. That was, what's his name? Marconi. Anyway, there's scores that Goldsmith did that he would feature. And these guys are friends of mine. I pinch myself. I can't believe it, you know, in the same room. And
Yeah.
And the students come in and they see these, and you know, they're the nicest guys in the world and relatively easy going. And then the red light goes on, right? And it's the intensity, you know, the concentration, and it's amazing. And it's not that they're human. They'll make mistakes too. You know, I mean, it's not too many of them. You know, if they make too many of them, they won't be invited back. It's too expensive, you know, with a recording studio. I hope that helps.